The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the quiet, flat landscape of a small Mideastern town. The Henry house, standing at the end of a dirt road, showed signs of wear, peeling paint and cloudy windows, neglected over the years. Inside, 20-year-old Caddy Henry sat at the kitchen table, sorting through a stack of overdue bills. The sound of her mother's persistent coughing came from the next room, a constant reminder of the heavy burden Caddy carried. "Caddy," her mother called faintly. "Can you bring me some water?" Startled, Caddy quickly filled a glass and rushed to her mother's side. Her mother, looking frail and pale, managed a weak smile. "You need to rest, Mom," Caddy said gently, trying to sound reassuring. "I'll take care of everything." But even as she spoke, the words felt empty. The moment was broken by the sound of a car pulling up outside. Caddy glanced through the window and froze. A sleek black Cadillac had stopped in front of their house, starkly different from the rusted pickups usually seen around the neighborhood. "Who's that?" her mother asked, her voice laced with curiosity and concern. Before Caddy could answer, the car door opened, and a man stepped out. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his silver hair gleamed in the fading sunlight, and his confident stride radiated authority. Caddy watched as he approached the porch. She narrowed her eyes, trying to make sense of the situation. "Miss Henry," the man said in a deep, calm voice. "I've been made aware of your family's situation." Caddy blinked, confused. "Who are you?" "My name is Nelson Coffey," he replied, nodding toward the Cadillac. "I own several businesses and properties in this area. I've come to offer a proposal." Caddy crossed her arms. "What kind of proposal?" Nelson's gaze remained unwavering. "I want you to marry me." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. "Marry you?" Caddy repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely serious," Nelson replied, his voice steady. "You're a smart, capable young woman. I believe you'd make an excellent companion. In return, I'll ensure your family's financial security. Your mother will receive top-notch medical care, and your brother's education will be fully funded. It's a fair deal." Caddy studied his face, searching for any hint of insincerity, but his expression was unreadable. "I need time to think about this," she stammered. "Of course," Nelson replied with a slight nod. "But I'll need your decision soon. Time is something we both can't afford to waste." After he left in his car, Caddy stood frozen on the porch, her mind racing with questions. That night, as the house settled into silence, Caddy sat at the kitchen table, illuminated only by the dim glow of a single lamp. Her mother's voice broke the stillness. "Caddy," her mother called from the doorway, leaning heavily against the frame for support. "What did he want?" Caddy hesitated before telling her mother about Nelson's proposal. Her mother's eyes widened in shock. "That's insane," she exclaimed, but her words were soon interrupted by a fit of coughing. Quickly, Caddy helped her mother into a chair. "Mom, listen," Caddy said, her voice trembling. "If I do this, you'll get the care you need. Sammy won't have to drop out of college. Maybe this is our only chance." Tears filled her mother's eyes. "I don't want you to sacrifice everything for us," she whispered. "You deserve to find someone you love, to be happy." "I'm not happy now," Caddy replied bitterly, wiping away her own tears. "At least this way I can help. Isn't that worth something?" Her mother didn't answer, her face etched with pain. The days that followed blurred into a mix of contemplation and quiet prayers. Caddy avoided her neighbors, who had already begun gossiping about the young waitress and the wealthy older man. As her mother's health deteriorated and the bills piled up, Caddy knew what she had to do. The morning of the wedding was cold and clear. Caddy stood before a small mirror in a borrowed bridal gown, the lace itchy against her skin. Her hands shook as she adjusted the veil, her reflection staring back at her with wide, fearful eyes. "Am I making the biggest mistake of my life?" she whispered to herself. A knock on the door startled her. It was her younger brother, Sammy, his ill-fitting suit emphasizing his lanky frame. "Caddy, it's time," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. Taking a deep breath, Caddy forced a smile and nodded. "Let's go." She walked out of the room toward a future full of uncertainty. The mansion loomed over a secluded hill in upstate New York, its towering silhouette outlined against a gray sky. As Caddy stepped out of the sleek black car, she gripped her small suitcase tightly. The imposing structure stood before her, its dark windows uninviting. Inside, the grand foyer was cold and unwelcoming, with polished marble floors beneath high ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers. The mansion exuded wealth, but lacked warmth. Leah, the longtime housekeeper, greeted Caddy with a forced smile. In her late 60s, Leah had a sharp gaze and motioned for Caddy to follow her. "This will be your room, Mrs. Coffee," Leah said, opening the door to a modest room on the second floor. It was simple but well furnished, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the rest of the house. "Thank you, Leah," Caddy said, forcing a smile. "Please call me Caddy." Leah nodded tightly before turning to leave, adding, "If you need anything, the staff is here to help. But it's best not to ask too many questions." Caddy blinked, her smile faltering. "What do you mean by that?" Leah hesitated but said nothing, leaving Caddy alone as she closed the door behind her. Over the next few days, Caddy struggled to adjust to her new life in the mansion. Its vastness and eerie quiet made it hard to feel at home. Nelson, now her husband, spent most of his time in his study or away on business, and their interactions remained distant, as though their marriage was a mere business arrangement. One evening, Caddy finally mustered the courage to join Nelson for dinner. The long dining table felt empty, with only the two of them at opposite ends. "Do you always eat alone?" Caddy asked, her voice echoing in the vast room. "Mostly," Nelson replied without looking up. "I have a lot of work to do." Caddy pressed on. "And what kind of work keeps you away so often?" His fork paused, and his cold, unreadable gaze met hers. "Business," he answered curtly before continuing his meal. That night, as Caddy lay in bed staring at the ornate ceiling, the silence was broken by a faint creaking sound. At first, it seemed like distant footsteps, but it grew louder, as if someone was walking outside her room. Her heart racing, Caddy sat up and crept to the door. She opened it a crack, but found the hallway empty, bathed in moonlight. The sound had stopped. Determined to shake off the unease, Caddy spent the following day exploring the house. She wandered from room to room, most of them either empty or locked. In the west wing, she came across a door unlike the others, heavily reinforced with a brass handle and no visible keyhole. A chill ran down her spine as she reached out to touch it. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Leah's voice startled her from behind. Caddy quickly turned, her hand instinctively falling to her side. "Why is this door locked?" she asked, her voice tense. "It's the master's orders," Leah replied, her face serious. "You should leave it alone." Caddy frowned, pressing further. "What's behind it?" "That's not for you to know," Leah said firmly. "Just let it be." That evening, Caddy tried to dismiss the strange encounter, but an unsettling feeling lingered. She couldn't shake the sense that the mansion held dark secrets, ones Nelson was determined to keep hidden. Late that night, Caddy heard the sound of a car engine outside. Peering through the window, she saw Nelson walking toward a black sedan, where a tall man in a trench coat stood, speaking to him in hushed tones. Curiosity getting the better of her, Caddy slipped out of her room and crept into the shadows. From the top of the grand staircase, she watched the two men through the large front windows. "Make sure she doesn't find out," Nelson said, his voice sharp and commanding. Caddy froze. Was he talking about her? What was he hiding? The car drove off into the night, leaving Caddy alone in the darkness, her mind spinning with questions. The mansion felt more eerie than ever as Caddy wandered through the west wing. For days, she had watched the locked door, waiting for the right moment to investigate. Tonight, to her surprise, it was unlocked. Her heart raced as she stepped inside, the door creaking slightly. The room was dim, lit only by a dusty chandelier. Shelves filled with old books and photographs lined the walls, and a mahogany desk stood in the center, cluttered with papers and an ornate pen. Caddy picked up one photo. It was of Nelson with a young, radiant woman. On the back, it read, "Nelson and Emily, 1998. She picked up more photos, each showing Nelson with a different woman, and the dates stretched over the years. Next to the photographs were legal documents, marriage certificates, prenuptial agreements, and death certificates. Caddy's stomach dropped as she scanned the causes of death, accidents, illnesses, disappearances, but all led to the same outcome. "What is this?" she whispered. Then she found a leather-bound journal. Flipping it open, she read Nelson's detailed entries about how he charmed women, isolated them, and then discarded them. One entry chilled her to the bone. "They always think they can leave. They don't realize they're mine until it's too late." Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Panicked, Caddy shoved the journal into her bag and tried to hide. Before she could, the door swung open, and there stood Nelson, his cold fury evident. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. I got lost," Caddy stammered, clutching her bag. Nelson stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "This room is off limits." "I made that clear." Caddy swallowed, trying to steady herself. I just wanted to understand why so many rooms are locked. Why you never talk about your past. You don't need to understand, he snapped. Just follow the rules. Summoning her courage, Caddy pressed on. What happened to them, your previous wives? Where are they? Why is there no record of them after they married you? Nelson's face hardened, but for a moment, there was a flicker of something softer, before it disappeared. You're my wife now. That's all that matters. Don't make me regret my generosity. A shiver ran down Caddy's spine as the realization hit her. She was in far more danger than she had imagined. She nodded, feigning submission. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pried. Good, Nelson said. Now get out of here. And stay out. Back in her room, Caddy locked the door and pulled out the journal. She read more of Nelson's manipulative tactics, his lies to cover his tracks. One line stood out again. They think they can escape, but they never do. The following day, Caddy confided in Leah about what she had found. Leah's grim expression confirmed her worst fears. I've worked for Mr. Coffee for over 20 years, Leah said quietly. I've seen things I wish I hadn't. But you're different, Caddy. If anyone can escape, it's you. They quickly devised a plan. When Nelson left for one of his late-night meetings, Leah would create a distraction, allowing Caddy to use a secret passage in the basement. The night of the escape, after dinner, Nelson kissed Caddy's hand with a chilling smile. Don't wait up for me, he said, his voice falsely affectionate. Once he was gone, Caddy and Leah put their plan into motion. While Leah argued with a guard at the gate, Caddy slipped into the basement, clutching the journal. She found the hidden passage and ventured inside, her heart pounding. The tunnel was narrow and damp, and the flickering flashlight cast eerie shadows. Behind her, voices and footsteps echoed. Find her! Nelson's voice rang out, cold and furious. Panic surged through Caddy as she quickened her pace. Finally, she reached a rusted metal door. She pushed it open, the creak of the door echoing in the tunnel, urging her pursuers on. After escaping into the forest, Caddy ran frantically, branches scratching at her skin as shouts and the flashing of lights chased after her. Desperate for help, she stumbled toward the road and waved down a passing car. The driver, a man named Frank Hans, quickly recognized her as the woman he had been tracking. He introduced himself as an investigative journalist and explained that he had been investigating Nelson for years. Without hesitation, Caddy climbed into the car, her heart racing as they sped away. However, a black SUV quickly gave chase, and Frank had to swerve to avoid a crowbar attack aimed at their side mirror, forcing the SUV off the road. As they neared the city, Caddy opened the journal she had clutched the entire time, revealing the damning details it contained about Nelson's manipulative and deadly past. With Frank's help, she felt more determined than ever to bring Nelson to justice. But as they received a chilling message from Nelson, she knew he wouldn't give up easily. At the courthouse, Caddy stood with Frank as Nelson was sentenced for his crimes, including fraud, coercion, and suspected involvement in multiple disappearances. Caddy's courage had led to this moment, and justice was finally served. The media painted Nelson as a predator, exposing his dark history, and Caddy's bravery was acknowledged. In the wake of his downfall, Nelson's estate was liquidated, and Caddy used her portion of the settlement to pay off her mother's medical debts and support her brother's education. This financial freedom allowed Caddy to focus on rebuilding her life. She opened a community center, New Beginnings, to help women in crisis, drawing strength from her own journey and inspiring others to reclaim their lives. As Caddy's bond with Frank grew, so did their relationship. What began as a partnership for justice turned into a deep connection, and a year after their escape, Frank proposed to Caddy in the park where he had first picked her up. In a touching moment, he asked her to stand by his side forever. Caddy, smiling through tears, agreed, joking about having no locked doors in their future home. Their wedding was a beautiful, simple affair in the garden of the community center, surrounded by those who had supported Caddy. During her speech, Caddy reflected on her journey, emphasizing the power of light after enduring darkness. As they danced beneath the twinkling lights, Frank whispered to her, "You didn't just survive, Caddy. You thrived. And I'm so proud to be part of your story." Caddy rested her head on Frank's shoulder, a contented smile on her face. "And I'm so grateful you were there to help me write it. Thank you for following Caddy's remarkable journey, a story of resilience, justice, and the transformative power of love. From living in fear to finding purpose and joy, Caddy's tale serves as a powerful reminder that courage and determination can light the way through even the darkest times. If Caddy's story resonated with you, Please like and share it with others who may find inspiration in her strength. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this one. Let's continue spreading hope and resilience together.